Alright, well, Diane and I are leaving Oakley, Kansas, and we're going to take 2 days to get to Pagosa Springs, Colorado. So when we stay in Oakley, we have the option of taking I-70 west and go up through Colorado Springs and down, but we typically do not like to travel freeways, so usually we'll travel back roads. So I think we're on 87 now. We'll flip you around and take a look. We'd rather come out here and travel the country roads, and so this will take us, I think we had 120 miles we had to run on a road like this. Then we're going to angle down through La Junta and around through the countryside, and then we will cross I-25 by Wallensburg, Colorado, and then we'll continue on out that way. But we'll probably hold up the first night around Wallensburg, and that gives us about a 280 mile day. All right, I'll let you tag along for a while. You know what we enjoy about taking the back roads is the freeways, like through the Midwest, especially through Kansas and all that kind of thing. It's just long and straight, and there is not really much to see. We see restaurants and gas stations all the time, right? You come out here to back roads, the speed limit's usually 65. I typically run speed limit out here. It's a good 2-lane highway. And then as you go, you come across little farming communities or real small towns. And even though there may not be much to see, it's I'd rather see that than what you see along the freeway. The downside, I guess, of traveling these roads is if you do happen to have any trouble, you don't have a lot of room to pull off the side of the road. You may or may not have cell service to call for any help. So that's the downside. But we've been traveling the highways now for almost 9 years, and most of our travels have been back roads, and we've been very fortunate so far. Page City. Here we are, the big town of Page City. You have a couple of grain elevators, a fuel station, and that's it. On we go. You gotta love it. And here we are coming up on another small farming community. Hey, back there a minute ago I may have mentioned we were on Highway 87. That wasn't true. We're actually on US 40. And coming into Winona, Kansas. So another thing to take into consideration when you're traveling the back roads like this is your fuel capacity. So, because you don't always find a gas station coming through some of these small places that you can get into with a big rig. So, you know, we have a 42-foot fifth wheel and then our truck hooked up there, so sometimes fuel stations will not accommodate us. Or they may not be open, like today. Here's one off to the left. Appears to be closed. But you know, the truck, we have a 52-gallon tank plus a 90-gallon auxiliary tank. So we have a lot of miles we can cover on full fuel. And then because Diane travels behind me, we have to take that in consideration too. So, you know, she gets 33 miles per gallon in her little car. So she has, 400 miles on a tank, which is quite a long ways. And for safety, when we're going to travel out like this, I carry an extra 5-gallon race jug of gas. So in case we want to throw that in her car, we can. We've done that a couple times, especially if we're going to travel through California, for example. I just refuse to buy fuel in California, so we'll stop somewhere, spend the night. I'll just put that 5 gallons in her car and avoid their expensive prices and move on if we possibly can. All right, back out in the country here. Again, nice two-lane highway. We got about 87 more miles to go before we make another turn. And we'll touch base again in a minute. And here's the small community of Wallace, Kansas. You're cruising through out here, it seems like every 20 miles, every 25 miles you come to a town. Hey, another thing you should take into consideration if you plan on traveling the back road through the country is your weight and your height. Now, we said we like to stay on secondary roads, which usually doesn't cause us any trouble for heights or weights because they're still traveled pretty extensively by trucks. But you still want to check different apps that are available, different programs that are available, and know what your RV height is. For example, we're pretty tall. We're actually 13 foot 5 inches at the tallest point on our fifth wheel. So it's not uncommon for a lot of the major manufacturers to be that tall nowadays. So you want to check your apps, make sure you're not going to head into some low clearance and cause you trouble, and check your weights. We're kind of heavy for a fifth wheel setup. Our fifth wheel weighs 26,000 pounds as we go down the road, and our truck is 11,000 pounds, so we're 37,000 pounds. Now again, sticking to the secondary roads, the major secondary roads, typically not a problem, but if you go any deeper into the secondary third type roads, whatever you want to call those, you really want to pay attention. So just something else to take into consideration. But isn't this much nicer? Just cruising. Now, don't get me wrong, not all the roads across the country on secondary roads are this nice. This is actually a very nice road for this section. We've gone on some roads we've kind of cussed ourselves for taking, but that's part of the gamble, right? To see the real country. All right, we'll touch base again pretty soon. All right, here we are coming up on another small, a little bit larger farming community. Haven't seen a sign of what this is called yet, but I'm sure we will right up here. So another thing to take into consideration if you're traveling the back roads, or actually just traveling the country altogether. So we're in Sharon Springs. Sharon Springs, all right. Is communication. So this will not pertain to everybody, but you know, Diane and I, since we switched from the Class A for the first, I think, what was it, 6.5 years, we traveled with a Class A, pulled a toad, and then we switched to the fifth wheel. And at that point, we started traveling with a second vehicle. Now, no judgment. I know it's not for everybody, but it works for us. We've been doing it now for over 2 years, no issues, been working out fine. The only downside really is I kind of miss having Diane sitting in the seat next to me. But you know what we do is we travel, we have a pair of walkie-talkies. We bought a fairly inexpensive pair of Midland walkie-talkies, and we will do a video on that coming up here pretty soon, I guess. It's not an expensive pair. It's one of those pairs that you buy and it says, you know, 25, 30 mile range. Well, in reality, it's probably a mile or 2 miles if you're lucky, and that's line of sight through flat terrain. And you know, for traveling through this kind of country, we don't get separated, and we can chat back and forth on the walkie-talkies, or if we see something off the side of the road, we can talk about it. And the main thing is, if we get separated going through a town, if I go through a stoplight, she gets held up, you know, I can kind of tell her, because I do all the navigating. I set all the routes, I run the GPS, she just follows along, and I communicate with her and tell her, hey, just keep on coming straight through town, or you're going to turn right up here on whatever particular road or highway, and we stay in communication. That works out well for us, but something else to think about. I know a lot of people use their cell phones, but you don't always have cell service. We tried that for a while. By the time you dial the number and somebody answered the phone, you could be past a road hazard. You could be past something you wanted to see. Maybe you saw a critter running out in the field. You wanted to see a fox or a coyote. by the time you dial and they answer the phone, you're well beyond that. So that didn't work for us. But the walkie-talkies do work. Now I'm going to ask you, if any of you travel with walkie-talkies that are a really good set, I don't care what it is, we don't mind paying extra money for something good, but something that will give us a true 20, 30, 40 mile range, we would buy that in a heartbeat. Anyway, maybe leave a comment down below if you know of such a critter. Hey, also, I'm filming this with our new DJI Pocket 2. So I'll be curious how this video turns out. I'm looking at the bugs on the windshield, and I'm kind of curious on what it's going to focus on, but I guess we'll figure that out come editing time. All right, look at that, a couple cars. Something we don't see much out here today. All right, that's it. We're going to we'll touch base again in a little bit. We find the next town. All right, here's another small town out here in the middle of nowhere, and this is Weskin, little town of Weskin. So we just ran through a little rainstorm back there and still have some drizzle, as you can see. So, which made me think of another thing you should be thinking about when you're traveling, period, but especially if you're traveling back roads, because if you're in a rig like ours, again, 42-foot fifth wheel truck, heavy, if you get in some bad weather, finding a spot to get off the road and hunker down is can be a challenge. If you're in a smaller rig, your opportunities are a lot larger to find a place to pull off. But pay attention to the weather, especially like we are now. We're out in the middle of Kansas. We've been having some pretty strong storms every evening, sometimes during the day. Thunder, lightning, some hail, heavy rain. You don't want to drive in that if you don't have to. So pay attention. Look at the weather forecast. Look at the direction you're going. Check the forecast of where you're headed to. And have a good idea what you have ahead of you for the day. So we knew today that we were going to drive into a couple pockets of rain. Most of the storms pop up in the afternoon, so we got a little earlier start for us. We took off at 8:30 in the morning, and we figure that we might get behind where most of these storms have been popping up by the time they pop up this afternoon. So anyway, just be aware of that. All right, we'll catch up again down the road. We still have another 44 miles of this 2-lane highway here before we make our next turn. And to get to where we said we want to get to today, for certain, is still another 202 miles. And that's all back roads like this. All right, we'll touch base in a little bit. All right, so traveling the back roads, just because the speed limit is 65 or whatever, on the freeway, there's a good chance you're going to run that fast all the time. So you're going to be making ground pretty much what you figure you're going to, unless you find road construction. But you run around out here in the back country, you have things like this to contend with. You might come across a farmer who's blocking the way. We're going to go on around him, though. We got lucky. No traffic and a straight stretch. But you can be traveling out here in the hilly area, and you might follow that tractor at 15 miles per hour for a couple miles. It's not a big deal. That's all part of it. But it's something else to think about when you're traveling the backcountry. All right, we'll touch base again pretty soon. Hey, hopefully you're enjoying the scenery. It's an overcast day. It's cool. Actually, it's a perfect travel day pretty much, other than a little bit of rain so far. All right, another small town out here. This is Arapahoe. I don't know. We'll go with that. Another small community. Hey, something else that came up to mind I mentioned about getting off the road in bad weather is if you're just trying to make time and travel from point A to point B, and you're doing a couple one-nighters. For us, for example, tonight we're going to do a one-nighter. How do you like to camp? You want to be in a campground every night? Do you mind camping alongside the road? Do you mind rest areas? You're doing this backcountry thing. Rest areas, sometimes you may not find them very often. Truck stops, null and void. So take that in consideration. You might want to plan in advance. If you're in a small rig, you can get into most any campground, so you're fine. If you're in a big rig like us, you can't just pull into some small campground somewhere. But that's okay, we're not complaining. We've done our research. We know that there's a big gravel area outside of Wallensburg, that if we want to stop there, we can. We know if we still want to keep on traveling, there's another wide pull out in the road. It's kind of a chain up area. That's another 30 miles up the road. If we know if we really feel froggy and want to cover a bunch of miles, once we get past Wallensburg, we can travel another 2 miles, or 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and make it to South Fork, Colorado. And we know of a couple white spots in the road there to camp. So just know what you want to do for spending the night. And just plan it. It's less stressful. And it's a lot less stressful if you have 2 or 3 options. So if you get tired early, you can get off the road. If you still have a lot of energy left, you can keep going. Just know what the terrain is, because just because you feel all rested at your first possible stop, you may come into a bunch of mountain passes, and that's tiring. There's no work, but it's just tiring. And that last couple hours can be grueling. So just know what you're getting into. All right, here's another small town out here. Let's see, where we at? Could this be Cheyenne Wells? Not positive. But look at here. So here's a truck stop. You can sit here and rest. You can get fuel here. So 35. I guess if there's a slow down. Yep, Cheyenne Wells. Dang, I might have ran out of words of wisdom for traveling the backcountry. I guess I should have written down a bunch of thoughts and notes before we took off. I've been just winging it. Hopefully we give you some ideas that will help some of you thinking about traveling the backcountry, or some of you that typically stick to freeways, thought about hitting the backcountries. Maybe you'll think about these things and give it a go. You can also find some real nice, well, I won't call them nice, you'll find small restaurants, just little nothing hole in the walls, Sometimes you get some of the best food. Find some of the locals sitting out there, farmers in from the field, yakking. That's real country. This is a pretty spread out town for being out in the middle of a farmland like this. So we still have 24 miles to go on this highway before we make our turn. And it looks like we still have 182 miles roughly to get to where we want to at least make it to today. Alright, looks like we're coming to the edge of town. So we will see you in a little bit. Here's a little something to consider too. This goes for any travel day, but especially if you're traveling back roads. If you happen to find a wide spot in the road take advantage of it if you think you have to go to the bathroom, because it could be a long ways before you find another one. And while you're stopped, make sure you check your tires, do a walk around, check your hitch, check your bikes on the back. Just make sure things look good. I don't want to flip you around here. Just take a look at everything. Make sure things look kosher. Wires are all hooked up. The tires look good. Slides are staying in. So I'm just doing a walk around right now with you. But once I stop this video, I'm actually going to do a better check. If you've done any tire work recently, this would be a great time to check your lug nuts, check the torque on your lug nuts. If you notice, I leave our hubcaps off of our wheels just because I'm kind of a nut when it comes to checking torque. Hey, look, you never know what you find along the way out in the middle of the country. Smoky Hill Trail. Gives you a little information you can read about that. So, okay, that's it for this stop. I'm gonna do my walk around. All right, well, we're here at our first turn, or actually our next turn. And made me think of another tip for you. This one should again go without saying, but don't just trust your GPS. Maybe the night before, get on your tablet or your laptop
US 287 South
and punch in your route. That way when your GPS tells you to go a certain way, you'll have a good gut.
Continue on US 287 South for 20 miles.
You'll have a good gut feeling whether that's what you should be doing. Heard a lot of stories about people following GPSs and getting into trouble, going in areas they shouldn't be. And that's no fun when you got a big rig driving around the country. So, you know, back a few years ago when Diane and I used to travel in the same rig, I would check it on the internet, do a MapQuest, for example, or Google Maps, and I would even print it out and have it sitting in the cockpit with us to refer to. We don't do that anymore, but I still do check the route on the internet before we ever take off and punch in the GPS. Now we do use the Garmin GPSs for trucks and RVs, and it's been pretty good for us. I can't complain about it, but I wouldn't put all of my trust into it. All right, onward. So another thing, we had an option back here to turn right, cut off 15 minutes, or go this way 15 minutes longer. But you know, again, we checked the route before we got to this section. We opted to go the 15-minute longer route, and as it turns out, we're following 3 semis. And we have a semi back behind us a ways, and they've all decided to go this route also. Now I have no idea where they're going, so, but it does make you feel good when you take off and all of a sudden you see large trucks going the same route you're going. By the way, I forgot to mention, a couple of clips back, we actually left Kansas and we're well into Colorado now. Actually, up here we're going to make a little turn. We're going to head toward La Junta, Colorado. We stayed in La Junta, Colorado a couple years ago. We went there to watch a spider migration. That was before we were doing the YouTube channel. It would have been very exciting anyway because we saw one spider that whole stay. Even though we had an enjoyable stay, we got to see some sights, but one tarantula out of a tarantula migration. All right, we'll touch base again here pretty soon. Well, it's been a while since we checked in. It may not seem like it in this video, obviously, but a couple hours has gone by. So we blew past where we thought we might spend the night at our shortest distance. And then we blew past the next 2 stops we thought we would spend the night. And we decided to boogie on towards South Fork. I don't know how many miles that's going to end up being, but well over 300, farther than we typically do. And look ahead of us. So we made that decision, and then we're running into a looks like a storm front up there. Been some pretty good lightning. I was hoping to catch a little bit in this video. Probably won't. Starting to rain a little bit. But we have 60 more miles to go to where we will certainly spend the night. If we go any further, we'll be going up and over Wolf Creek Pass. Did you catch that lightning? Yeah, we're driving into it. So if we don't spend the night where we're planning on spending the night, then we'll have to go up over Wolf Creek Pass. And I'm not going to do that today. We'll do that tomorrow morning. All right, we'll check back in. And then sometimes you just make the wrong choice. Well, another thing to think about as you're traveling the back roads is always figure on the unexpected. So we blew on by the first stop we thought we might stop at because it put us there at 12:30 in the afternoon. We actually picked up an hour by coming west. Then we blew by the next 2 stops, and we decided we can make it to South Fork, Colorado. So from Oakley, Kansas to South Fork, Colorado, made it about a 390-mile day, all 2-lane highway, except for some passing lanes in the mountains. So yeah, close to 400 miles today, all 2-lane highway. We caught some good rain a couple times, went through some pretty country. And I think we know of a good wide spot in the road there in South Fork that we can pull over, spend the night. I think because we had such a long day, we're going to just treat ourselves to dinner out maybe. There's not much in South Fork. Maybe we can find pizza. I'll flip you around. You can get an idea where we're headed. We finally got out of the bad weather. We're headed towards some clear sky, relatively clear. And this is basically at the base of Wolf Creek Pass. And tomorrow morning we'll get up, go over Wolf Creek Pass, and head on down through Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Well, I'm going to flip you around. All right, so this is Highway 160. We just went through Del Norte, and we're about 5 miles outside of South Fork. We might show you what we end up with tonight. All right, we'll be back. All right, well, we found our white spot in the road we were talking about. Actually, we didn't find it. We've been through South Fork many times. We knew this wide section of dirt was out here. So we took off from Oakley, Kansas at 8:45 yesterday. We rolled in here to South Fork about 3:30. That was 390 miles of all 2-lane country roads, except for a few when it went to 4 lanes when you were doing passing in the mountains, which was fine. But so a beautiful day for a drive, other than a couple of downpours of rain. Wasn't too bad at all. We covered more miles than we anticipated, but we got set up here last night, and then we went down the road about a mile, had a good Mexican dinner, came back, put the antenna up, watched a little TV, turned on the heat. Got down to 34 degrees last night, so keep that in mind while you're out traveling around too. It got darn chilly. We were plenty warm last night, but we put on a couple extra blankets. So now It's a beautiful sunny morning. We gained an hour coming west, so I'm an early morning riser to begin with, so I typically get up at 4:30 or 5. So I was up like at 3:30 in what our body says it's time. And we can't get into our next campground till probably 1 or 2. It's only about a 2-hour drive, not even that probably. You have to go over Wolf Creek Pass. I'll probably do a video going over Wolf Creek Pass, so maybe if you're interested in that, come back and check that out. So, all right. Hey, hopefully you got some tips out of this video. You enjoyed it a little bit. If you did, how about a thumbs up? Maybe hit that subscribe button down here below. And as always, have a great day. We'll see you in the next video.